The number of calls went really down. People were saying no. I really felt my hands were kind of tied. I didn't know what else I could do. She said to me, you're just too expensive. I'm going to go work with another ghostwriter and I'll come back to you for editing. I said, whoa, time out. Like, I don't want to be editing someone else's work. And I said, look, if you are willing to experiment with me.
Imagine transforming the worst business year of your career, a period defined by shame and self-doubt, where you hadn't landed a single client for over 12 months, into a season of massive growth. What if you could take a hard look at your high-priced service and completely reinvent its delivery so you could take on multiple projects without compromising on the quality? That's exactly what our guest did today. She chose an unconventional, innovative path that not only attracted new clients, but also helped her build entirely new, scalable service tiers. How did she find this winning formula when the traditional path had failed? Welcome to today's episode of Your Business Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Shapiro, and my guest today is Emily Crookston. Emily, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jeremy. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so I want to go back in time a little bit. If we get back to your entry into this world of nonfiction, you mentioned in your book, Unwritten, about, getting chewed up and spit out of the soul-crushing machine that is the academic job market. What happened to Dr. Emily?
Yes. Well, if I had a glass of wine here, you'd hear the real story. But basically, I was on the academic job market for 8 years and applied to about 300 jobs in that time. And my goal was to really get a tenure track job. That's the big kahuna in academic world. That's where, you go for 6 years and you publish a bunch of stuff and then they give you tenure and you're good. Basically, you don't have to worry about reapplying to jobs for the rest of your life in a lot of cases. It was rough, and academic arena could be a really toxic place, and it was for me. And I ended up not getting a tenure track position and leaving because of really some politics that went down. And so that was really a tough lesson to learn. But I think in the process, I figured out, actually, academia is where big ideas go to die. They're not really where big ideas go to thrive. And I really kind of realized in that process that I wanted to help big ideas get out into the world, and academia wasn't the place for me. So here I am.
How did you go from that to getting into ghostwriting and becoming a developmental editor? That's so different than academia.
Yeah. And a lot of my friends in academia always say, how did you do it? It is very different. When I was ready to leave academia, I said, I don't know what I want to do. I literally hadn't thought about what I wanted to do besides being a philosophy professor. I have a PhD in philosophy. And a friend of a friend was looking for marketing help. And it turned out what she needed was ghost blogging. She has a web development company and she had clients who needed blogs. This was 2015 when blogging for business was a little bigger than I would say it is now. So I was writing blog posts for people. And at some point she said, you could start a business doing this. And I thought, oh, that might solve some problems that I have right now, which is I don't want to work a 9 to 5. I enjoy in academia, you have your summers to yourself. You have a month off at Christmas, and I really wanted to keep my time flexible. I like that about the academic track. And so, that's what I did. I built my business. I built my website during spring break on the last semester of my teaching career. And the rest is history. Business is huge.
So in terms of the business book market, what was it that excited you about the business book market? And how did you carve out your niche within that space?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first book I wrote was actually a memoir, and it was really the only book I ever wrote that's a straight up memoir. I love reading memoir, but I don't have much of a talent for writing in that way. What I have is a talent for what I call technical writing. Philosophy is pretty technical. You make your art, you may have your thesis statement, you make your argument with your points of evidence, and then you respond to an objection, and that's your paper. And it actually lends itself pretty well to business writing as well. You have your point of view, you have your angle on a topic, and you share your reasons for that angle, and there you have your book or you have your blog post. So my writing lent itself really well to that. And I also think I think it's really important that if you're going to spend the time to write a book and you own a business, because let's face it, I'm working with business owners who are writing in the cracks and crevices of their lives and businesses. If you're going to go through all that effort, you've got to have an idea of how that book is going to make you money. So that puts me immediately in the space of business books, which is just my term for nonfiction, books that are going to help you grow your business, as opposed to someone who's writing a book and wants to be, the next bestseller on the, New York Times bestselling list with their book and make money as, a famous author. That's very different from writing a book that, you're going to sell to audiences you're speaking to, or your clients, or people who can't afford to work with you as a client. So that's the space.
So you took on not just one client, but you started to grow that portfolio out. Like, what did that initial growth feel like when you realized you'd found exactly what you were meant to do?
Yeah, it felt really good at first because it was like, oh, I can work on longer projects. And what I love is that I work really quickly. I write with a client in 4 months. I turn around these books. So 16 weeks is my process. And I kind of think of it like a semester in the academic sense. You've got 16 weeks and you're going to hit it hard. You're going to write your book. You're going to take a little break in the middle, spring break or whatever. So I like that rhythm. So that felt really nice. And I realized at a certain point that, it's just as hard to sell a really low priced offer, and sometimes harder than it is to sell a high priced offer to the right person, and that's the thing. Like once you dial in your audience really well, the sales process becomes really easy. And so that part felt really nice to me too. Like once I figured out who I really wanted to work with and they started coming to me, the sales calls were easy. And so that was just like a green flag for me. I just wanted to keep going. But yeah, I didn't know really what to expect. I just started saying I can write longer things. But it turns out that there's like a really nice need for this. And I find the collaborative process to be really fun and interesting. And I get to learn about a new topic and then send someone on their way to publish their book. And it's great. I feel like it's a really nice marriage.
Yeah, I love that collaborative approach that you have. It's not just a handoff project that comes back done or, a polishing of something else, but it's done in concert with a client. And that's a great thing, but scalability obviously becomes an issue. So from my understanding, as we've talked about your journey of our time together, you reached a point where it felt like you were standing still, even after you published your first book. Can you walk us through like what that plateau felt like after that first publication?
Yeah. I mean, my business has always been a little bit up and down, but the year I published my book in 2024, that was my worst year in business. And, the reasons for that, if I knew, I would be doing your job, Jeremy. Like it's very hard for me to say like, oh, that was the worst year. I didn't have a ghostwriting client at all in that year. I did other things. I did some developmental editing. So I didn't make zero money, but I had no ghostwriting clients. And then this year I've had 4. And really what happened was, I didn't know why business was so down. A lot of people said to me, well, you were marketing your book, your attention was divided. But also we have this little thing called AI that's come on the scene. And I think a lot of people are using AI to write their books. And if that works for you, go for it. I use AI with my clients now. This is part of the big pivot that I've made. And before, back in 2023 or whatever, when ChatGPT first was introduced to the world in a wide sense, I actually wrote a blog post where I was like, I will never use AI to write. Here's why AI can't write your book. But I have a good friend who is an AI consultant, and she really showed me the ropes. And what happened is I had a client, a really good client call, sales call in November of 2024. And that client's, we hit it off immediately once we got on the call. And she said to me, you're just too expensive. I'm going to go work with another ghostwriter and I'll come back to you for editing. And I said, whoa, time out. Like, I don't want to be editing someone else's work. And we all have heard this story. I'll come back to you when, and that, doesn't always happen. So I talked to my friend who does AI and I said, is there a way that you can show me how to use AI with my business in a way that I'm going to feel comfortable. I'm going to feel happy about it. And then I went back to the prospect and I said, look, if you are willing to experiment with me, I will cut my price in half. We'll use AI to write the book. It'll help. It'll be faster for me. And she was game. She was like, yes, I want to learn how to use AI. I want to work with you. Let's make it happen. So, and that's been the case with all 4 of my clients this year. I said, I've been upfront with them. I said, look, I'm using AI, and they've been excited about it. They're like, great, let's do this. And it just makes my process a lot easier in a lot of different ways.
It's interesting because you talk about adjusting your price, which, as we know from my book, we talk a lot about the dangerous, disastrous approach to discounting your way to profitability. The asterisk there, though, is if you're adding a different tier or level of service, well, now that's not discounting. You are now offering a fundamentally different product at a different price point, more palatable to prospects you're working with. So that's really nicely done. Now, I want to go back to that point, though, before you found the shift, though. For many of our listeners, there's been a point where you're feeling frustrated, like what you're doing just isn't working anymore. So for that stretch of over a year of not landing a new client, like what was that like from an emotional standpoint of wondering, like, are you doing something wrong? Like, were you beating yourself up? Like, where were you in that space?
Yes, I was spiraling for sure. I was doing all the things, like working 20 times harder, like trying to be in all the places, pumping up my social media presence, being on LinkedIn more, trying to do more networking, trying to meet more new people and bring them into my orbit. And I don't think, I had basically the same number of sales calls as I always do, that the number of calls wasn't really down. So the prospects were coming. It's just that people were saying no to me a lot. Or they were saying, I'm not sure. Let's see what happens with the election. There was a lot of uncertainty in the economy as well. But yeah, emotionally, it was very tough. I kept trying to focus on book marketing and that kind of thing. But, there were snags with that as well. And so that wasn't really helping. I really felt my hands were kind of tied. I didn't know what else I could do to grow.
Yeah. Very often when I see business owners are stuck, what they'll do is just go and try and get more customers, right? Do the same thing they were doing before, or add more channels to sell the same thing they've been selling all along. And sometimes the lesson there is the thing you're selling might just not be a fit for the market. So getting more prospects, like the ones you've already have that said no, doesn't move the needle. But what you did, just for our listeners, looking at what that strategy is you pivoted and created a different service offering that suddenly now did convert for the market you were already attracting.
And the tiering was really important because I still offer that higher tier. It's not like it went away. It's just that I realized there's a market for I'm calling it topic focused books versus thought leadership, movement starting books, those are 2 different universes. And I was trying to sell that big movement piece to people who really just wanted a topic focused book. So
oftentimes in the high end services business, you're typically capped by your time. Right? Especially for our business owners who are service providers, you only have so many hours you can put into the business to service your clients. So you might be capped at, 1, 2, 3 clients a year that you can work with. And that is plenty to have a 6-7 figure business, right? But that's also only so scalable. So I really love how you found a way to offer a mid-tier offering that is also more scalable for your time and your team. And that was able to start bringing some clients on. So when you implemented this strategy and you started getting these prospects converting over and coming on board, was it a different quality project, a different quantity project? How did that vary who you were working with?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. I mean, it attracts a group of people who are a little more experimental and are actually a better fit for me because I really like to work with people who are disruptive, people who have, I say big ideas, but they have ideas about how their industry should change. They really are looking and thinking about doing things a little bit differently. So I think that was one of the biggest shifts. It doesn't change the quality. The books are the same length. The amount of time is basically the same, except that it really saves me time it saves me time, but the engagement with the clients is basically the same. And yeah, it's been interesting to see how, for example, one of the things I can do with AI is a client comes to me and they have an idea, but they don't have an outline. I can take that to Claude and I can come up with a bunch of outlines and share them and say, well, do you like any of these? Like, let's mix and match. And so that's helpful. Whereas it would take me hours and hours of time to come up with several outlines for a client. I wouldn't do it. I just give them one and say, this is what it is. But now I have the option, we have options to it expands, our universe in a lot of ways.
Yeah, thematically, what I see with a lot of business owners like yourself is that AI isn't there to replace the thing you're doing. It just helps you to do a better job and service your clients better. So kudos on finding that blend. So Emily, in your book, Unwritten, you wrote, and I love this quote here, entrepreneurship has changed me in a lot of ways, but perhaps the most obvious shift is how it has molded me into an action taker. Now, that's a theme I cover a ton in your business growth playbook, taking action. Can you share a little bit more about how you became an action taker?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was listening to an interview with Mel Robbins, and she talks a lot about action taking too. Her 5-second rule is all about take action in 5 seconds. And she was talking about how in our culture, basically, there's kind of a dividing line between action takers and people who kind of want to just talk about things. And I was in that camp. I still am, if I'm being honest, my soul really gravitates toward intellectualizing and let me read 1,000 books about this topic before I have an idea about it, And I just really, entrepreneurship has really driven home the idea that if you wait too long, he who hesitates is lost. That quote fits really well. It's just, if you wait too long, people have moved on. And so you've got to really strike when the iron is hot. And also the idea that you can put half-baked ideas out there. It's actually a good thing. I tell clients and I tell people who are writing their own business books, you should talk about your book. You should talk about your half-baked ideas, because that's when you're going to get feedback from people. That's when you're going to see what lights people up. And, if you say something and people are like, oh, that's weird, I don't get it, then maybe it's not an idea that should be in the book. Maybe that's not something to pursue, or maybe you just need to clarify. But, it's good to share those half-baked ideas. And so entrepreneurship has really given me the confidence to just put ideas out there faster than I would otherwise.
Yeah, I think newer business owners very often want to have a perfect, complete, done, ready to ship idea before they reveal it to the world. And as serial entrepreneurs have learned, this idea of ship something, whereas you're talking about write in public, get a draft out there, something, and get feedback, because isn't it better to find out something won't work early? I
had a mentor at some point that wanted me to do this 40-page business plan, and I'm just I have a very simple business. I don't need it's to spend the time on a business plan that would have set me back so far.
Yeah, sometimes we got to ship it and test it. So staying on the theme here of implementation and action, how did you go about implementing the new service delivery model, right? You shared a little bit of the story about starting to use Claude in some ways and getting some help with a friend, but from onboarding clients and using a model you'd never used before, how did you go about implementing this new process without compromising the quality that has really been your brand?
Yeah. It took some practice. It took some time. And then that's why that first client, I said, look, this is an experiment. I was really upfront with her. If you'll be patient with me, we'll walk you through. And it's transparent. I just say, we're using Claude for this. It's not really working. I think I just need to write this piece myself. There's things like that. We both have combed through the document and noticed oh, this sounds like AI. We gotta fix this. We both started recognizing the little quirks that it does and that kind of thing in that process. But my process itself hasn't changed a lot, other than I'm bringing in the AI and I'm telling clients where I'm using it and showing them how I'm using it. But the process itself hasn't really changed much. It's more just be aware. I ask clients now if they want an AI disclosure statement. Some clients want to disclose that they're using AI. Some of them don't. Some of them are sensitive to the different language, different ways it speaks and that kind of thing more than others. And, I have to kind of work, but that's been the case always. Every book is different. Every project is different.
So in implementing this, I think in this day and age, every company has used AI or tried using it in various different ways, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. What were some of the challenges that you and your clients faced, especially as you needed to create different different AI products or scalable bots that would grow with you?
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge for me is my own engagement. Using AI to write is a very different thing from writing myself. It's little things like with interview transcripts. A lot of the books that I write, the author's done some interviews and they want to include those in the books. In the past, I would have to read through the transcript. I would often watch the video because of the interview, because that helps me kind of get their ideas in, figure out where those ideas fit in the book. That's always a big challenge. Now I can go to AI and drop the transcript and say, give me some ideas about where we might weave in some of these ideas into the book. So it saves me tons of time, but I'm not as in it as I have been in the past, so that's been a switch for me. I have to figure out how to use AI in a way that feels authentic and doesn't lose what I see as the value add that I bring when I'm working with people. Otherwise, it's like, well, why didn't they just use AI without me? But I think there's a real value in working with AI as an expert. It's a very different experience than if my client just goes in and says, I want a chapter on this. And, that's not going to be the same thing. So figuring out, navigating that switch has been one of the biggest challenges.
It sounds like you've navigated that really well, and much to your client satisfaction. So kudos. That's great. And for our listeners, what I'm hearing there is, again, this is not about AI just doing this all and having a self-serve product, but this is working in concert with AI to deliver a quality result, which is powerful. So within the ghostwriting industry, typically it seems there may be a few different product offerings that are available, but at the end of the day, a ghostwriter produces a book for you, right? Did you find inspiration for your tiered model from other ghostwriters, or did you appreciate this from outside of the industry entirely?
I didn't learn it from others. I think the writing community is very split on whether we should use AI at all. I was at a ghostwriting conference in New York a couple weeks back, and yeah, it was like 50-50, the room of who uses AI and who doesn't. There's still a lot of privacy concerns, confidentiality concerns, which I totally get. And I think the jury's still out on a lot of that stuff. But no, it was just me saying, like, how can I make this work? I haven't had a client in a year. Like, I don't want to lose this client. I want to work with this person. How can I justify dropping the price for her without doing a discount? Because I don't want to discount my prices either. But yeah, it just occurred to me that some people want an easier lift. And this was my way of being able to do that. The other challenge for me is that I don't do book coaching. A lot of book ghostwriters also do coaching. So if someone can afford ghostwriting, you offer them coaching services. They're cheaper, right? Because the author is doing the writing themselves and you're just kind of the guide. But I can't stand book coaching, to be really honest. So that wasn't an option for me. But AI has really opened up a universe for me around book coaching, because now I'm starting to build tools to help DIY authors, people who are using AI to write their books, because it works better when you're an expert. So how can I lend my expertise to them so that they can do it mostly themselves? So that's where my head's at in the moment.
What I'm hearing there that I really like is you found service offerings that are also in alignment with what you want to be doing, right? And while the rest of the industry may offer things like coaching and other services that fit very well in the traditional model, you've recognized what you don't want to offer and you're not willing to do that, which is great to have that line. So really nicely done on lining up what you can offer with what you want to offer and having that be the business model versus what you feel you have to do.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think that's huge when it comes to scaling. Like a lot of companies don't just think about scaling without what they want, And so I think that's a great question for people to be asking.
Yeah. And this is one of those things where if your business coach is telling you to do something that you don't totally understand or agree with, or doesn't seem in alignment, like it's okay to ask about that. Just like you did with your coach who wanted a 40+ page business plan. And you're like, I want a simple one pager, right? I'm sure many folks would say, hey, go ahead and offer coaching. It's okay to say that doesn't fit what I want to be doing.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to end up hating every day. So, all right, let's talk about the change you saw, right? So you saw a tremendous change, landing a number of new ghostwriting clients. You do other things beyond just that ghostwriting, which you alluded to earlier. But what kind of quantifiable impact have you seen on overall not just business growth, but really profit by adding in this new tier of service?
It's been like everything. This has been the easiest year to sell that I've ever had. And I've always raised my prices every 3 or 4 clients. And, so I was actually charging, I've charged a very big range for my services. So I feel like I've kind of found a little bit of a sweet spot where I'm at right now. And I think, it just has so much to do with where the market's at and, what people can really gain. We talk about value-based pricing. I think you talk about that a bit in your book. And that's a really important idea to think about. But I think the truth is that it doesn't work if you're not aligned with what you're selling, so you have to believe in it. It can't just be like, oh yes, I recognize that my client's going to make millions of dollars off of this thing. You also have to feel like, yeah, there's a huge value to this, and I'm here to put myself behind that value. Right? It comes from where I am. So I feel like it was an important realization that I also made. Like, this number feels comfortable to me. The clients that are coming and saying yes are the right fit. All that it just felt like everything kind of lined up.
And what I'm hearing you say there, and this is so great for our listeners who are thinking about pricing in your own business, right? Is that value-based pricing means you're determining what you charge based on the value you bring to your clients versus just what you've historically done or what you think feels right or what makes you money and so on. You anchor it around the value. So if you haven't raised your prices, like Emily's sharing she's done, think about what your prices could be based around the value that you're offering to your clients. So beyond the ghostwriting, what were some of the other unexpected benefits that you realized by filling the gap within your service offerings? What else has that done for you by having more than just one thing to sell?
Yeah, well, it's really opened up. Like, I've had a newsletter for years and I send it religiously every week. I'm very consistent with it. I've had a blog for years. I post to my blog once a month. But I've always kind of felt like, nobody buys business ghostwriting, book ghostwriting services from an email, right? High premium services, they're not going to like, oh, I just got that email from Emily. Let me go and write her a check for $20,000. That's not that's not usually the order of operations. So what it's kind of done is got me thinking more expansively about what I can do with that list. And I think I have now some lower priced offers that I can actually sell through an email. So I think in a lot of ways, it's helping me expand my audience. It's helping me get some people in who might down the road be ready for ghostwriting, but keep them interested, keep them on my radar. So I think that's one of the biggest things that's done. It's really expanded my mind and thinking about like, what can I do? And, I'm really interested in helping DIY authors write better books. Like, it's relatively easy to write a book, especially with AI now. And I don't want to continue to contribute to like all the slop that's out there and everything that's being published that's so low quality. If I can have a hand in helping increase the quality of business books being published, I want to be there. And that might, I recognize I can only write maybe 5 books a year. With AI, I could probably write 6 books a year, which is more than before. I was saying 2 or 3. So it's doubled my output, but I recognize I can't work with everyone. And so this has given me an opportunity to help people who can't do ghostwriting with me. I can't write everyone's book.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about adding more entry-level tiers is it opens up your offerings to prospects you already had that just couldn't work with you. And the same thing happens when you add a higher level tier. There is a higher level of service that your existing prospects would have loved to have bought had they known about it. It's just it wasn't offered yet. So that's why I love either putting tiers in the middle or earlier on or higher above, whatever the offering is you have.
Yeah, I love how you talk about that in the book, because it's like you don't have to change anything. You might still be mostly delivering that middle tier, but now suddenly you're getting some higher priced people in and you're getting lower priced people in, and just expands who you're reaching without really changing much, right? It's just adding on a new service offering. So
yeah, it amazes me every time when we work with businesses and add on a more premium offering. You'll have prospects who've been on the list for sometimes years and never bought the core products. And suddenly you add like a 10x higher priced offering. And that's what they wanted the whole time. They didn't want that entry level.
Right. It's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So for other business owners who might be feeling stuck in their business right now, like what's one piece of advice you'd have to help them get unstuck? Maybe they're in a traditional business model like you were at the time, and they also want to break free. What would you advise business owners stuck in that spot to do?
Yeah, first thing is like take a deep breath because it's not easy and it's really frustrating when you're stuck and you feel like you've tried everything. But I think if you can step away for a minute and just like really just take a break, you will often come back with a fresher head and you might just have like a new look at things, a new take. Another piece of advice I'd give is to talk to somebody maybe you don't usually talk to a friend, just, tell your mastermind what's going on, like whatever, get some help from people who maybe you wouldn't normally turn to for that kind of challenge. And that can often jog, like a good conversation can just change so much, and help you kind of just think about something new. I mean, what can you do with AI? That's a really valid question to ask right now. If you're not using it at all, it's a really big opportunity. There's got to be something that it can help you with. So if you're afraid of it and you're feeling stuck, I think it's time to not be afraid anymore. Take a look at it, see what else you can do.
So I'm hearing you say three things there. One is get space from your business in terms of like, don't do business stuff at all. And whether it be take vacation, get outdoors, go play sports, do something that's not your business. Two is have conversations with folks, and whether that be in a mastermind or one-on-one format or whatever it is, but have those conversations about your business with the people you don't usually talk to get fresh ideas, input and all. And then three is take the time intentionally to do the work on your business versus in your business and ask yourself those questions. Like you were sharing about how can I better be using AI in my business, or whatever challenge you're facing, get out of the business to do that work on the business.
Yeah, exactly. I did all three of those things. Yeah.
So knowing what you know now, Emily, like what would you have done differently when first implementing these tiered services or the AI assisted model?
Well, nothing comes to mind immediately. I might have done it earlier. I might have thought about it a little sooner. That might have helped, but that's always hindsight's 2020. It's hard to say. I'm really glad that I talked to some people who were able to say to me like, "Oh yeah, the year I published my first book was my worst year in business." Like that really did help me come down off the ledge, because I really was like, I published this book and now I'm going to have to go get a W-2. And so I was really glad that those opportunities came through for me when they did, because I was really, really at that point. So, yeah.
Sometimes hearing that similar journey or story from someone else can be reassuring. That's good. I also like you touched right there about this idea of I wish I'd done this sooner. So often our hindsight is I wish I had fired that person earlier, or said yes to this opportunity earlier, or launched this thing earlier. Like there's always this regret of not taking action sooner. And yet we very often repeat the pattern of not taking action as soon as we can. So this goes back to what we touched on earlier about taking action and doing something now.
Yes, it's so hard to know when the right time is. But the other thing I say about action taking is you can almost always change your mind. You can almost always go back on something that if you decide, nope, that wasn't the right move, you can almost always go in a different direction later. So there's not a lot of harm.
Some things are harder to click undo on, but enough things are relatively easy to course correct.
Start a new offer, it doesn't work, no problem.
That's okay. So in terms of metrics, what are some of the key metrics or KPIs that you track in your business or with your clients to ensure you're on a growth trajectory and that you and your clients hit your goals?
Yeah, in terms of email, I track my conversion rates, I track click-through rates, open rates. Those are really big numbers for me when I'm trying to figure out, whether I'm growing, when my audience is growing. That's kind of the key place I look there. And I also track sales calls, number of sales calls, and conversion rate on those. I like to make sure that, if something's not going right, if a conversion rate's starting to dip a little bit, I like refresh, look at those, what's happening in those sales calls. Am I, do I need to adjust my script or whatever, do I need to adjust the conversation that's happening within those calls? But those are the main ones that I look at.
Love it. And what I'm hearing there too is that you know your funnel steps and you track those steps, whether it's how many people are on the list, did I send the email to, did open, did click, and so forth on the marketing side, or how many prospects do I have, to how many calls got booked, to how did those calls go, to what script did I use. That is so, so key. If you're not measuring those things, you don't know how well you're doing. So really nicely done on knowing your steps and tracking those.
I keep it simple. I try to keep it simple. But yeah.
I grew up with the saying of, keep it simple, Shapiro.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So to recap for our listeners, you moved from a place of being stalled in traditional ghostwriting to creatively adopting new technology. This allowed you to create profitable tiered services that brought in new clients and position you to fill a major gap in the marketplace. For our listeners who want to learn more about you, where should they go right now?
You can find me on my website, which is thepocketphd.com, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Emily Crookston on LinkedIn.
That's fantastic, Emily. So that is the two greatest resources you can get right now from our call is going to Emily's website and also, finding her and this episode and everything else on LinkedIn. Thank you, Emily, so much for joining us and for sharing with us about how you were able to implement some of those key strategies, pivot, and get yourself unstuck and back to growth.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's been great.